indicating to governments that we're prepared to work with them, but that they need to make progress. And continually trying to lift up the actions of these civil society leaders. In a way that provides them a little bit more space. And that space slowly grows and it ends up being a process, and it's not always a process that travels in a straight line. Sometimes you take 2 steps forward, you take a step back. Sometimes you start seeing openings in some of these societies. And then governments get nervous and they clamp back down. But that steady pressure, combined with an appreciation of the history of these countries, combined with a willingness to listen, combined with an ability to mobilize the international community, so that we're not thinking that we're doing this all by ourselves. Over time, we've seen results. More modest than I would hope, but that's true of pretty much everything. About foreign policy and domestic policy and the human condition. All right. Question, speaking of. President Obama, okay, guys. I gave you a couple. I already gave you bonuses. I gave you a bunch of bonuses. Thank you, guys. Barack Obama. Press conference following G20 summit. Delivered September 5, 2016, Hangzhou, China. Good evening, everybody. Let me begin by thanking President Xi and the people of Hangzhou and China for the hospitality. in hosting this G20 summit on the shores of beautiful Westlake. Thank you so much. Yes, yeah. This visit offered the 8th opportunity for President Xi and me to meet. We agreed to advance our cooperation across a range of issues, including climate change. Global health and development, peacekeeping, counter-narcotics, and nuclear security. We also addressed our differences on issues like religious freedom, maritime security. And a level economic playing field, but we did so in a clear, candid, direct, and I think constructive way. That has helped us to manage problems. And it's consistently helped us to improve relations between the United States and China. This has also been my 10th and final G20 meeting. It goes by fast. And so before I take your questions, let me put into context what we've done over the course of our G20 meetings. And I think back to April 2009, when hundreds of thousands of Americans were losing their jobs. And their homes and their savings each month, and unemployment was on its way to 10%. Around the world, for the first time in a generation, the global economy was contracting. Trade was shrinking, and the international financial system was nearly frozen. By several key measures. The global economy was on a worse trajectory than it was at the outset of the Great Depression. But the size and the scope of the crisis was not what made that London G20 historic. What made it historic was the speed and magnitude of our collective response. One nation couldn't solve the problem alone, so together, developed and developing nations alike took a comprehensive and unprecedented set of actions to prevent another depression and set the stage for recovery. Most important was to create jobs and growth by stimulating demand across our economies. And America led the way. By then, in just my first 10 or so weeks as president, we had already passed the Recovery Act. Set in motion plans to rescue our auto industry, stabilize our banks, jumpstart loans to small businesses, and launch programs to help homeowners refinance and stay in their homes. And our G20 partners would follow with similar actions. To stabilize the global economy, we rejected the protectionism that could deepen the crisis. We cooperated to keep markets open and trade finance flowing. And bolstered the international finance system's lending capacity to respond to countries that were hurting the most, and to prevent future crises. We took steps to reform our financial regulatory system, including the historic Wall Street reform that we passed more than 6 years ago. These were the actions we took in 2009. They were actions that prevented another depression. And created conditions for the global economy to grow by more than 25% over the past 7 years. What we also did, though, was to elevate the G20 to become the world's premier forum for international economic cooperation. And that decision allowed us, as the global recovery progressed, to take further actions to strengthen the global economy. And that's what we came to Hangzhou to do. We've had long debates over the years about the best ways to promote sustained growth. But America's voice in the G20 has always been one of bold action. And that stance has been backed up by our economic performance. Since job growth turned positive in early 2010, America's businesses have created more than 15 million new jobs. We've cut the unemployment rate in half. And so far this year, wages have risen by almost 3%, which is much faster than the pace of inflation. But one of the things that we learned through the G20 process is that more than ever our economies are interconnected, and we've got more work to do together to keep the global economy growing. We have to do more to grow wages faster, to shrink inequality faster. To give everybody a shot at opportunity and security in a changing economy. And that should be the way forward for the G20, to make sure that the benefits of trends like globalization and technological progress are shared broadly by more. Workers and families who still feel like the global economy is not working for them. And that's what we did here at this G20 summit. We committed to using all of our policy tools to promote robust, inclusive growth that creates opportunity for young people and the middle class that they're working to join. We focused on making sure that businesses can compete fairly and all working. Families can take advantage of the new prospects the digital economy creates. And we reaffirmed our commitment to support emerging economies through an array of development initiatives. We also discussed ways to unlock the mutual benefits that trade provides while keeping it fair for our workers and the playing field level for our businesses. And that includes high standard trade agreements that actually benefit the middle class, like the TPP. That includes working together to abstain from unfair currency practices. And address corruption and global tax evasion. And it includes our agreement to establish a new forum to address some of the market distorting policies in the global steel sector that have hurt workers and businesses. We also added momentum to the fight to protect our planet for future generations. On Saturday, the US and China formally entered the Paris Agreement. And today, the G20 welcomed efforts to enter the Paris Agreement into force by the end of this year. So if there's anything that the past 8 years have taught us, it's that the complicated challenges of the 21st century cannot be met without coordinated and collective action. Agreement is not always easy and results do not always come quickly. Respecting different points of view. Forging consensus instead of dictating terms that can sometimes be frustrating. But it is how progress has been won and how it will be won in the future. It's how we've come as far as we have in the 8 years since the crisis affected us all. And it's how the G20 can make progress for all people in the years to come. So, with that, let me take some questions. And I will start with Roberta Rampton of Reuters. Question, thank you, Mr. President. I want to ask you about tomorrow, the next leg of your trip, a little bit. And tomorrow you're going to be meeting for the first time with President Duterte. And he's a leader whose war on drugs has led to the death of about 2,400 people in just the last 2 months since he took office. And today he said in a very colorful way that you better not bring this up. And I'm wondering, are you committed to raising this with President Duterte? And are you concerned that meeting him legitimizes his approach on this issue? President Obama, well, I just came out of a long day of meetings, so I just heard about some of this. But I have seen some of those colorful statements in the past, and so, clearly, he's a colorful guy. And what I've instructed my team to do is to talk to their Philippine counterparts to find out is this. In fact, a time where we can have some constructive, productive conversations. Obviously, the Filipino people are some of our closest friends and allies. And the Philippines is a treaty ally of ours. But I always want to make sure that if I'm having a meeting, that it's actually productive and we're getting something done. We recognize the significant burden that the drug trade, plays not just in the Philippines, but around the world. And fighting narco-trafficking is tough. But we will always assert the need to have due process and to engage in that fight against drugs in a way that's consistent with basic international norms. And so, undoubtedly, if and when we have a meeting, that this is something that's going to be brought up, and my expectation, my hope is that it could be dealt with constructively.